Money was always the language my family spoke most fluently. The Caldwell family fortune started with my grandfather in the 1960s. Commercial real estate investments that turned $50,000 into $8 million over 2 decades. Dad inherited that foundation and built it into something bigger through aggressive stock market plays in the 80s and 90s. By the time I was born, the family was worth approximately $180 million. Growing up, every dinner conversation revolved around investments. Portfolio allocations, market trends, upcoming IPOs, dividend yields. My older brother Marcus, 7 years my senior, absorbed it all like he was born for it. By 16 he was managing a $500,000 trust fund Dad set up for him as a learning experience. My sister Vanessa, 4 years older than me, got her own $500,000 trust at 16 too. She turned it into $1.2 million by 23 through careful blue-chip stock selections and municipal bonds. When I turned 16 I asked about my trust fund. Dad had looked at me over his reading glasses. "Let's see how you do with your savings account first, Lily. Investing isn't for everyone." But Marcus and Vanessa got theirs at 16. Marcus and Vanessa showed aptitude. "You're more creative. Basic. Not everyone has a mind for numbers." I'd gotten a savings account with $10,000 instead. The message was clear. I wasn't smart enough for real money. I heard it constantly growing up. "Lily's the creative one," Mom would tell her friends. "Marcus has the business brain, Vanessa has the analytical mind, and Lily has the artistic soul. Every family needs balance." What she meant, every family needs someone to be less than the others. I wasn't bad at school. I got A's in everything including mathematics. But when I brought home my report card with a perfect score in AP Calculus, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey. Marcus just made $47,000 on a tech stock play. Did you want to hear about his strategy?" By college I'd stopped trying to engage with family investment discussions. I studied economics at Yale, paid for by a trust fund that was controlled by my parents and distributed in small monthly allowances, so I'd learn budgeting. Marcus got his full trust access at 21. Vanessa got hers at 22. I was 24 when I finally asked about mine. "We've decided to keep yours in trust a bit longer," Dad said. "You haven't shown the maturity level needed for that kind of responsibility. Your spending habits are concerning." My spending habits consisted of rent, groceries, and student loan payments. But I didn't argue. I just nodded and continued living on my $2,800 monthly allowance while Marcus bought a $3.2 million condo in Manhattan with his distributions. After Yale, I took a position at J.P. Morgan as a junior analyst in their investment management division. Entry-level work, nothing glamorous, but I was good with data. Very good. I could see patterns in market behavior that others missed, identify undervalued assets, predict sector rotations before they happened. My family never asked about my work in any meaningful way. Family dinners still revolved entirely around their investments, their strategies, their gains and losses. "How's the bank job?" Dad would ask occasionally. "Good. Still doing basic analyst stuff?" "For now." "Well, everyone has to start somewhere." Marcus started in the mailroom, and look at him now. Marcus had spent 2 weeks in a mailroom as a college internship before Dad gave him a position managing $12 million in family assets. But I didn't point that out. What I didn't tell them, I'd made VP at JP Morgan by 28. My portfolio management team handled $4.7 billion in assets for high net worth clients. My personal compensation was $1.8 million annually, plus performance bonuses that added another $3 to $4 million per year. What I definitely didn't tell them, I'd been building my own investment portfolio since I was 22, starting with the small inheritance from my grandmother that bypassed the family trust structure. $75,000 that I'd turned into $8 million through aggressive but calculated plays in emerging tech, biotech, and strategic options trading. By 32 I had $94 million in personal assets. I lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, drove a 7-year-old Toyota, bought clothes from J.Crew. My family assumed I was barely making ends meet on my bank salary, probably around $80,000 a year in their estimation. "Must be tough in New York on your income," Vanessa had said once, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Let us know if you need help with rent." "I'm managing fine." "You don't have to be proud, Lily. We're family." There's no shame in accepting help when you've chosen a less lucrative path. I'd smiled and changed the subject. 3 years ago something interesting happened. Dad, Marcus, and Vanessa had a crisis. Their investment strategy, aggressive individual stock picking with heavy leverage, worked brilliantly in bull markets but was catastrophically vulnerable to corrections. When the market dropped 18% over 6 weeks in early 2021, their leveraged positions got margin called. They lost $67 million collectively. Nearly 40% of the family wealth evaporated. Dad called an emergency family meeting. I flew home to Greenwich, Connecticut, sitting in the same dining room where I'd been told countless times that I didn't understand investing. "We're restructuring everything," Dad announced, his face gray with stress. "We need to consolidate our assets, create a unified family investment strategy, bring in professional management." "What about your individual portfolios?" I asked. "We're merging everything into one family fund," Marcus said. $110 million in combined assets. "We need professional management, not a bank but a private wealth advisor who understands high net worth families." "Have you found someone?" "We're interviewing candidates. We need someone brilliant, someone with a proven track record, someone who can rebuild what we lost." "What are the requirements?" "Minimum 10 years experience, verified performance history managing $500 million plus in assets, expertise in both growth and preservation strategies," Vanessa listed. "Dad's working with a headhunter." I nodded slowly, said nothing. Over the next 3 weeks I watched them interview candidates. They brought 5 prospects to the house, all men between 45 and 60, all with impressive credentials and expensive suits. They chose Bradford Whitmore. 61 years old, 35 years experience, managing partner at Whitmore Wealth Management. Conservative, traditional, exactly what they thought they needed. The problem: Bradford's actual performance history was mediocre at best. His verified returns over 20 years averaged 6.8% annually, barely beating the S&P 500. His expertise was mostly in maintaining existing wealth, not growing it. His client base consisted primarily of old money families who wanted someone trustworthy to do nothing risky with their assets. He was a terrible choice for rebuilding what they'd lost. But I said nothing. They signed with Bradford, transferred their $110 million to his management, and spent 6 months watching him generate 4.2% returns while the market returned 14%. At Thanksgiving that year, Dad was visibly frustrated. "Bradford's too conservative. We're not making back what we lost." "You need someone more aggressive," Marcus said. "But everyone aggressive wants to charge 2% management fees plus 20% performance fees. It's highway robbery." "Maybe we should manage it ourselves again," Vanessa suggested. "And risk another crash? We can't afford to lose more." I ate my turkey silently. "Lily, you work at a bank," Mom said suddenly. "Do you know any good investment advisors?" "Some. Anyone you'd recommend?" I considered my answer carefully. "I know someone. Very good track record, aggressive but calculated strategy, reasonable fees. But they're selective about clients." "How selective?" "Very. Minimum investment is usually $50 million and they only take clients they believe they can really help." "Could you make an introduction?" Dad asked. I could ask. No promises. "What's their track record?" 22% average annual returns over 8 years. Verified by external audit. The table went silent. 22%? Marcus's voice was skeptical. "That's impossible to maintain." "It's verified. I've seen the documentation." "What's the name of the firm?" Vanessa asked. "LMC Capital Management." None of them recognized it. Why would they? I'd established it 5 years earlier as my personal investment vehicle, named with my initials. Lily Marie Caldwell. Structured through layers of legal entities, nothing obviously connected to me. "Can you set up a meeting?" Dad pressed. "I'll reach out. They're very private. No guarantees." I left Thanksgiving dinner and spent the weekend setting up the infrastructure. My attorney drafted the management agreement. My accountant prepared the verified performance history. All legitimate, all auditable, all showing exactly what I'd told them. The following week I sent them the contact information. An email address, a phone number that routed through my corporate structure, and a calendar link for scheduling. Dad called me 3 days later. We reached out to LMC Capital. They want to meet next week. Can you join us? Since you made the introduction, it might help. I'll try. I have work commitments, but I'll see what I can do. The meeting was scheduled for their house in Greenwich on a Tuesday afternoon. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a Saint Laurent suit I'd never worn around my family before, carrying a Bottega Veneta briefcase, looking every inch the successful executive I'd always been but never showed them. Dad answered the door and stared. Lily, is everyone here? Yes, but you look different. I came from work. Conference calls all morning. Where should we meet? He led me to his study where Mom, Marcus, and Vanessa waited. They all looked at me strangely. The expensive suit, the confident posture, the aura of professional competence I'd carefully hidden for 3 decades. LMC Capital should be here any minute, Dad said. Thanks for coming, honey. Your introduction might really help us. I sat down, opened my briefcase, removed a document. They're already here. What? I slid the document across the desk. LMC Capital Management. Lily Marie Caldwell, Founder and Chief Investment Officer. That's me. The silence was absolute. Marcus picked up the document, his hands shaking. This is a joke. It's not. LMC Capital is my firm. I've been managing investments for 8 years. Currently overseeing $680 million in assets for 17 clients, plus my own portfolio of $94 million. You're worth $94 million? Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. As of yesterday's close, yes. $94,700,000 approximately. Dad's face had gone pale. How? I'm good at investing. Turns out I have a mind for numbers after all. But you work at JP Morgan, Mom said weakly. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan. I run their emerging markets investment division. I handle that portfolio during business hours and run LMC Capital independently. My compensation from JP Morgan last year was $6.8 million. LMC Capital generated another $18 million in management fees and performance bonuses. The numbers hit them like physical blows. $25 million, Marcus said slowly. You made $25 million last year. Approximately. And you live in that shitty apartment in Brooklyn. It's not shitty. It's efficient. I don't need space I won't use. Why? Dad's voice shook. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. You spent 32 years telling me I wasn't qualified to invest, that I didn't have a mind for numbers, that I should stick to my savings account. I saw no reason to correct your assumptions. We thought you were struggling, Mom said. I know. You offered to help with my rent. You sent me a $5,000 check for Christmas last year, to help with expenses. You suggested I get a roommate to split costs. You worried about me constantly because you assumed I was barely surviving. You could have told us, Vanessa said. Like I told you about my perfect score in AP Calculus? Like I told Dad I wanted to learn about investing when I was 12? Like I asked about my trust fund at 16, 21, 24, and 28? I told you plenty. You just never listened. Marcus found some anger. This is manipulative. You let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. You assumed artistic meant stupid. You assumed creative meant incompetent with money. You assumed that because I wasn't loud about my success like you two, I must not have any. So this is revenge? Dad asked. No. This is business. You need investment management. I provide investment management. I'm the best person for the job regardless of our relationship. We can't hire you, Marcus said. It's too weird. I shrugged. Then hire someone else. But Bradford Whitmore is generating 4% returns in a 14% market. At that rate you'll rebuild your losses in approximately 17 years. I can do it in 4. How? Vanessa demanded. I opened my briefcase, removed a presentation deck. 80 slides of detailed analysis, strategy frameworks, sector allocations, risk management protocols. Everything they needed to see that I knew exactly what I was doing. I walked them through it for 90 minutes. My investment philosophy, my track record, my specific strategies for their situation. I showed them client testimonials, verified performance data, external audits. By the end they were silent. Your returns are legitimate? Dad asked finally. Completely verifiable. I can connect you with my clients, my auditors, third-party verification services. Everything is documented and transparent. Why didn't you tell us? Mom repeated. Because I wanted you to value me for who I was, not what I had. I wanted you to respect my intelligence, my capabilities, my contributions. Instead, you spent 3 decades dismissing me as the family's artistic failure. We never said failure, Vanessa protested. You didn't have to. Every time you explained to someone that I was the creative one, the subtext was clear. Every time Marcus and I were compared, the implication was obvious. Every time my career was described as nice, while yours was impressive, I understood exactly what you meant. No one could deny it. So what happens now? Marcus asked. That's up to you. You need investment management. I'm offering my services. Industry standard fees. 1% management fee, 15% performance fee. Those are actually lower than what I charge most clients because of the family connection. You charge us. Mom looked shocked. I charge everyone. This is my profession. I'm very good at it and I don't work for free. What if we say no? Dad asked. Then say no. I have 17 other clients and a waiting list of 47. I don't need your business. You asked for an introduction to a good investment manager. I'm the best one you'll find. But if you'd rather hire someone else because your ego can't handle your youngest daughter being better at this than you, that's your choice. I started packing my briefcase. Wait, Dad said quickly. Just wait. Let us discuss this. I'll give you privacy. I'll be in the living room. I walked out, leaving them to their crisis. Through the closed door I could hear raised voices. Marcus arguing this was humiliating. Vanessa insisting it was too weird. Mom worried about family dynamics. Dad surprisingly defending the numbers. They were undeniable and he knew it. 20 minutes later, Dad emerged. We'd like to move forward. But we have concerns about the family dynamics. Such as, how do we separate business from family? How do we make sure this doesn't ruin our relationship? We establish clear boundaries. During business hours, I'm your investment manager. You treat me with the same professional respect you'd give any advisor. Outside business hours, we're family. The roles don't mix. What if we disagree with your investment decisions? You signed away decision-making authority when you chose Bradford. Same terms apply here. You set your risk tolerance and goals, I execute the strategy. You get quarterly reports and can ask questions, but day-to-day decisions are mine. That's a lot of control, Marcus said from the doorway. That's how investment management works. If you want to make your own decisions, do it yourself. If you want professional management, you cede control to the professional. Dad nodded slowly. What's your honest assessment? Can you rebuild what we lost? Yes. 4 years, maybe 5, you'll be back to $180 million. 6 years, you'll be at $250 million. That's conservative projection assuming 18% average annual returns, which is below my historical performance. And if there's another market crash? My downside protection is significantly better than your previous strategy. I use sophisticated hedging, don't overleverage, maintain diversification. When the market dropped 18% in 2021, my portfolios dropped 6%. When it recovered, we captured 94% of the upside. Risk management is half of what I do. What's the other half? Finding opportunities everyone else misses. That's where the real alpha gets generated. They exchanged glances. Let's do it, Dad said finally. But Lily, this has to be professional. We need to trust you're making decisions based on what's best for the portfolio, not revenge for 30 years of dismissal? He winced. Something like that. I'm a professional. I don't let personal feelings affect investment decisions. Every choice I make will be based on data, strategy, and performance optimization. Your clients, nothing more or less. We signed the management agreement the following week. $110 million transferred to LMC Capital Management, with me as the sole decision-maker on their entire family wealth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The daughter who wasn't trusted with a normal trust fund at 16 now controlled every dollar her family had. I restructured their portfolio immediately. Liquidated their individual stock positions. Too concentrated, too risky. Moved them into a diversified strategy. 40% growth equities, 25% value equities, 15% international, 10% alternative assets, 10% fixed income. Not sexy, not exciting, but optimized for consistent returns with downside protection. The first quarter they made 7.3%. The market made 6.1%. Second quarter, 11.2% versus market's 8.8%. Third quarter, minus 2.1% versus market's minus 4.7%. Fourth quarter, 9.8% versus market's 7.2%. First year total, 28.4% return. Their $110 million became $141 million. Year 2 was even better, 31.7% return. $141 million became $186 million. They'd not only recovered their losses but exceeded their previous peak. And they couldn't deny it was because of me. Family dinners changed dramatically. Investment discussions still dominated, but now they asked my opinion. Not as a courtesy but genuinely seeking my expertise. "Lily, what do you think about emerging markets right now?" Dad would ask. I'd give my analysis. Sometimes they'd ask follow-up questions. Sometimes they'd just listen. Marcus struggled the most with the new dynamic. His ego couldn't quite process that his little sister was managing the family fortune. He'd make occasional comments about getting lucky or riding a bull market. After one particularly snide remark, I'd had enough. "Marcus, your portfolio when you managed it yourself returned 9.2% annually over 8 years. Mine returns 22% annually. That's not luck. That's skill. If you can't acknowledge that, maybe you should hire a therapist to work through your insecurity." Dad had actually laughed. Mom looked scandalized. Vanessa hid a smile. Marcus went red but said nothing. 2 years into managing their money, Dad asked me to take on a bigger role. "We want you to manage the full family office," he said. "Not just investments but estate planning, trust structures, tax optimization, everything. We'll pay you appropriately. Full family office managing director compensation. That's typically $2 to $5 million annually for a family your size. We're prepared to pay $3.5 million, plus your normal performance fees on the investment management side." I considered it. "That's generous. But I have one condition." "What?" "You acknowledge publicly, at family gatherings, in conversations, in every meaningful way, that I'm not the family's artistic failure. I'm the family's most successful member financially, and you were wrong about me for 3 decades. Silence. "You want us to admit we were wrong?" Vanessa asked. "I want you to acknowledge reality. I'm not asking for an apology, though that would be nice. I'm asking for recognition that your assumptions about me were completely incorrect and that your treatment of me was based on biases, not facts." "That's fair," Dad said quietly. "We were wrong. Completely embarrassingly wrong. You're not just successful, you're extraordinarily successful. You've built something remarkable and we missed it entirely because we couldn't see past our own prejudices. Thank you. Will you take the role?" "Yes." "Send me the contract." I became managing director of Caldwell Family Office at 34 years old. My siblings, both older than me, now reported to me on financial matters. The daughter who'd been given a savings account while they got trust funds was now managing every aspect of their wealth. The irony was delicious. But I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I just did my job exceptionally well. By year 4 I'd grown the family wealth to $270 million. More than they'd ever had even before the 2021 crash. Dad was now 71, thinking about legacy and succession. He called me into his study one Sunday. "I want to restructure the family trusts," he said. "Give you control of everything, not just management but ownership. You've earned it." "That's not necessary. It's appropriate. Marcus and Vanessa are comfortable, successful in their own right. But you're the one with the vision, the skill, the discipline to preserve and grow this for future generations. I was wrong to doubt you. I want to correct that now." "What about Marcus and Vanessa?" "They'll maintain their current distributions. But ultimate control should rest with you. You've proven you're the only one who should have it." I thought about 16-year-old me asking about a trust fund and being told I wasn't mature enough. I thought about every dismissive comment, every condescending lecture about leaving investing to the experts. "I'll think about it," I said. That Sunday dinner, the conversation naturally turned to investments. It always did. Marcus was discussing a stock tip he'd heard. Tech startup, huge potential. I'm thinking of putting $500,000 in personally. What's their revenue model? I asked. Still developing it. But the technology is revolutionary. Sounds risky. You can't make real money without risk, he said with some of his old condescension. That's basic investing. No, that's gambling. Investing is calculated risk with comprehensive analysis. Not everyone can be as cautious as you, Lily. I set down my wine glass. My cautious approach generated 31.7% returns last year. What did your stock picks generate? That's not fair. You're a professional. And you're the one who told me to stick to my savings account because I didn't understand investing. So maybe take your own advice and leave the real decisions to professionals. The table went silent. Dad cleared his throat. Actually, Marcus, I'd like you to run any major investment ideas past Lily before executing. She can help you avoid costly mistakes. Marcus's face reddened, but he nodded. Mom changed the subject quickly, but the power dynamic was clear. I wasn't the family's creative one anymore. I was the family's financial authority. Every decision ran through me. Every strategy required my input. The daughter who'd been told to leave investing to the experts now was the expert everyone deferred to. A month after Dad's succession conversation, I received a text from my portfolio manager at JP Morgan, ready to liquidate their $270 million position. I was at Sunday dinner when it came through. Dad was talking about a charitable foundation he wanted to establish. Mom was suggesting vacation properties. Vanessa was planning her daughter's very expensive wedding. All of it funded by wealth I'd built from $110 million to $270 million in 4 years. All of it controlled by me, the daughter who supposedly didn't have a mind for numbers. I looked around the table at my family, comfortable, secure, planning futures they could afford because I'd made it possible. I texted back, no. Maintain position. They finally learned the lesson. The lesson wasn't about money. It was about assumptions, about dismissal, about the cost of underestimating someone for their entire life. They'd spent 32 years telling me I wasn't qualified to invest. Now their entire financial existence depended on my investment decisions. They told me to stick to my savings account. Now I controlled their $270 million portfolio. They'd said to leave investing to them. Now they left everything to me. That's not revenge. That's just reality finally aligning with truth. I could liquidate their position tomorrow. Walk away and let them scramble to rebuild. Watch them realize exactly how dependent they'd become on the daughter they'd dismissed. But I won't. Because I'm a professional. Because I'm good at my job. Because despite everything they're still my family. And because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's succeeding so completely that everyone has to acknowledge they were wrong. It's controlling everything they value while maintaining perfect professional composure. It's being the person they needed all along, even though they spent decades insisting I was the person they didn't. Dad raised his wine glass. To Lily, who's made all of this possible. We're grateful every day for your brilliance. Everyone drank. I smiled, accepted the recognition, and thought about the girl with the $10,000 savings account who'd been told she didn't understand investing. She'd understood just fine. She'd understood well enough to turn that dismissal into motivation. She'd understood well enough to build an empire in silence. She'd understood well enough to end up controlling every dollar they had. Stick to your savings account, Dad had said. I'd stuck to something better. My instincts, my intelligence, my relentless drive to prove everyone wrong. Now they all know it. And they'll never forget it. Every dollar they spend, every investment they benefit from, every comfortable retirement they enjoy. All of it exists because the daughter who wasn't qualified turned out to be the most qualified person in the family. That's not irony. That's justice. And I earned every single dollar of it.